Welcome to another episode of Clear Lake Connections, where we talk to the people behind the businesses in Bay Area, Houston, proudly sponsored by UTMB Health. Today, we have Matthew Latham with us with Arborist on Demand.
That's right.
Which is so cool. But first, Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a great story we want to share.
Yeah, so I started in the industry in about 2003. It was a happen chance, total God thing. I was having situations where it was bad in one business situation, and then a friend of a friend said, "Hey, I got a buddy that they'll pay you $8 an hour to haul limbs around all day." So I said, "Great, let's go," because I'm not making money now. And just getting started in my career and as an adult and all that. And I really enjoyed the work and fell in love with just being outdoors and getting to experience nature and, sweating all the toxins out, I think, probably.
Right.
And it was, I loved it. I was being a boy basically, but getting paid for it. And so I, fast forward a couple of years, he asked me if I wanted to climb, and I did. And it took me about an hour and a half to make like 3 or 4 cuts because I was terrified, and I literally was like hanging on for dear life. I wouldn't move, but it was such an adrenaline rush. I kept going, and eventually found myself mentoring under a board certified master arborist and a guy that was a member of a group called American Society of Consulting Arborists. And it turns out he was one of the first board certified master arborists in the world. I had no idea. I'm working under this living legend kind of guy. And so he starts teaching me and all of a sudden my eyes were opened. I see this whole new world of tree care that I'd never known existed. And so that didn't work out. I got feisty and wanted to run my own thing and thought I could do some things better, and like any idiot kid does. And I started my own company in 2010, and we operated until middle of 2017. And in that time, I got certified as an arborist in 2010 as well, and started competing, actually. That exists in certain tree climbing competitions throughout kind of the southern half of the states. And it was really fun, and I loved it. And we would talk minor details about how to make one little turn different in the climbing hitch and all that.
So literally, there was a race?
Yeah. So there's different events. It's the Texas Tree Climbing Championship. Last I heard, they were trying to get on ESPN. I know nobody's heard of that.
How high do you go?
Usually there's one event called the work event and a work climb event. And you start about 60, 70 feet up, and you have to work your way down to different stations, trying to emulate sort of another day at the office, kind of climbing a tree, pruning the tree, that sort of thing.
Wow. How long does that take?
It's a 2-day event.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, I did really poorly the first year, and I decided, let me start training a little bit, start getting purposeful towards this. And next year I placed in the top 10. And just got better and better after that. I did that for about 5 years, and made some awesome connections with some really cool people. Just had a good time.
How do you prepare for that?
Well, there's a lot of training. You have to understand there's actually tree care standards, and these are codified by the American National Standard Institute, ANSI. And so they're the same guys that make the rules for the construction sites and all that. And they've actually figured out ways to be safe and come home alive every day, because it turns out we are a very hazardous industry.
Yes.
Chainsaws at height is you put A and B together, right? And there's a lot of people that get injured in my industry, but, I'm married. I love my family. My wife and I had an agreement as I play by the rules. So that means understanding the rules, first off, and then just being cautious. Every day at work can potentially harm or end me, and that's something that we have to seriously consider. There's some really bad numbers I won't go over in detail with you right now, but we're a hazardous industry, and so that was important to me, not just for climbing and the competitions and all that, but also just for I want to come home and be a dad, and be a husband. And so I started reading. It's ANSI A300 standards. And if your tree guy doesn't know that those exist, that might be a sign,
right?
But it's very serious what we do, and we have a lot of fun doing it. And so my wife and I decided we were kind of done as entrepreneurs for a little bit. In 2017, we wound up selling the business, and we traveled just state to state, contract to contract. Like I said, I'd met some people through the years, and I got certified as a board certified master arborist last year, which was that I think there's about 6 or 7 of them here in Houston. And so I just really took my career seriously, but also we had a lot of fun doing it because I'm still a big grown up boy that now
Right.
just more responsibility. That's the main thing, I think.
Do you still climb?
Every now and then, not very often, but
You have people who do that.
I do, yeah. And I got to a place health wise where I had to call it quits, and I'm now 20 years into it. I'm not new,
Right.
and tree guys tend to get worn out pretty quick.
I would imagine.
So
And the heat.
yeah.
Being in Houston.
Yeah. And I grew up in Dallas, and like I said, we traveled for a few years, and that was a really great experience because I'm seeing bigger things, I'm seeing more possibility, and also meeting new guys. We like to talk strategy and figure out, hey, what's the best and safest way to do this? And so we did that, came to Houston, and we really had no intention of staying here, honestly, but kind of fell in love with the area. Got a church home and got some really close friends. And so we're, to pun intended, we're planting roots kind of thing. And so,
I love that.
yeah, we just decided, I was contracting for some other companies, and we decided, you know what, we're going to be here. Let's do something cool in Houston. Because we used to joke about how bad Houston tree care was like 10, 12 years ago. Locally within the Texas industry, we have our own little chapter. We used to talk about how bad Houston was being such a big city.
Wow.
And it's interesting being here because it gives me an opportunity to do kind of like we did in Dallas years ago. Was we set the standard, and we just talked, and we developed friendships, and we train other guys that were new in the industry and teach them how to, again, come home alive, but also how to be a better arborist and a better professional. So we decided, you know what, let's stick around for a while and see where this goes. We like Houston. We're right near the beach. Bay Area is great. There's so much to do here. And,
Right.
And so, yeah, we started a business last year, and it's been really exciting kind of watching it grow and getting some open doors here and there. And, yeah, we've really, really developed a lot of things, but it's given me, again, the opportunity to go in and talk to other industry professionals and network with these guys and, just say, hey, let's try wearing your helmet and see what happens next time, you have something happen.
Oh, because
hey,
people are very careless.
Very careless, yeah. And I think the standard of pruning, too, is such that it's maybe a generational passed on from one person to the next, when in reality, there's a lot of science and a lot of guys doing research on how to figure out what's the best way to prune a tree to make it safer and healthier. And so for me, it's really cool just being here and not only helping serve a lot of people and taking care of their trees properly, but also, it's really a fresh ground, like kind of a clean slate to work with here in Houston. And so I get the opportunity to go around and meet the top guys and kind of network and start building a community like that.
That's wonderful. Now, does it depend on the different types of trees?
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you really have to study.
Yeah,
You really
there's a
got to
lot.
know what you're doing. Looking at your website, I could tell there's a lot.
Yes.
It's not just I need a tree trim or my tree's sick or
Yeah.
whatever. There's so much more to it, right?
Absolutely. And I'll give you one example that I see all over the place here is we call it lion's tail pruning. And if you think of like the Dr. Seuss books where you've got this long stem and then a little tuft of leaves or whatever at the end, then that actually really is harmful to a tree. And people think,
wow.
hey, I've got to cut all of the middle out of the tree. We'll walk into a forest. They don't look like that. They're very different. And quite frankly, forest trees typically hold up better than trees in your front yard. And we do have a really diverse horticulture here too. There's so many things that will grow here. You go down to Galveston, it's mostly tropical. You come up here, it's not all the year. And so you've got different challenges like that. And I'm sure we all remember the freeze, a couple, 3 years back.
Yes.
Killed 90% of the queen palms, instantly. And so knowing these kind of things, like here's an interesting fact. Palms are genetically closer to grass or a bamboo than they are a live oak or even a pine or something like that.
So they have to be treated that way.
They have to be treated that way. Yeah. Like for example, you'll see guys sticking gaffs, the little spikes on their boots to climb the tree. Well, palms don't have the ability to heal in that sense. And so what you're doing is you're just leaving an open pathway forever for disease and infection to get in. So little things like that make a difference. You have to treat it differently.
Okay.
Same with live oaks.
Sure.
You don't go and prune the same way as you would. You don't care for it the same way you would a pine or even a red oak. And so, yeah, knowing the ins and outs. There was a guy that we call him the father of modern arboriculture. His name's Alex Shigo, Dr. Alex Shigo. And he had a phrase. He said, there's the three most important things in tree care is one, know your tree. Two, know your tree. And three, know your tree. So that was really interesting for me traveling a bit, literally East Coast to West Coast. I'm seeing every environment that America has to offer. Maybe not everyone,
but close to it.
Yeah. And so I'm seeing different kind of trees. And so I had to broaden my understanding of different species to accommodate, to be able to say, we were climbing redwoods, and taking care of redwoods. Well, you don't skim a redwood up because then you make it top heavy and more likely to break. And so little things like that, same with pines, is knowing how the tree's going to respond to what I'm about to do to it makes a real difference. And so, like I said, a palm, when you stick gaffs in it, you're basically killing the tree. It's just when is the next question. When is it getting infected? And that has a lot to do with how healthy is it? Does it have the resources in terms of vitamins and nutrients and things like that to be able to thrive? And trees actually have an immune system. So, right, if they've got the resources they need, just like us, I'm not getting younger. I have to take vitamins and stuff now to compensate my bad eating habits. And same thing is when I let myself go and have a pizza that weekend or whatever, it's going to stress my body out. And trees kind of operate on the same principle. Is last year we had a big drought. Well, that's a factor that stresses the tree out. It doesn't mean it's going to kill it, but it can have a weakened immune system. And now you're more prone to beetles coming in and, borer beetles coming in and attacking it, or fungus coming in and attacking it. Overwatering is one of the big ones I see. Is whenever you keep a soil saturated, and we have clay so it stays wet for a long time, that's a perfect breeding ground for fungal pathogens that can come in and kill your tree. And so knowing these things, it for me, I like to think it makes me a better servant of my clients. And if nothing else, I feel better about myself knowing, hey, this is the right steps to take in treating this certain disease or this pine bark beetle or whatever. And it's a constantly evolving industry. There was a guy, I went to a conference this February, and kind of a leader in the industry. He stood up, he said, I'm really excited for you guys. I'm about to retire, but you are approximately where modern medicine was back in the 40s and 50s. So that, to me, that's really exciting to be on the kind of the cutting edge of that. We're just now getting GPR, ground penetrating radar for trees, so we can map root systems, things like that. So really,
that's incredible.
It's a fun, evolving industry. Very exciting to be a part of it. And like I said, there's a lot of work to do, but, a lot of fun to be had doing it too. So.
Right. So living here on the Gulf Coast, knowing our temperatures, knowing the possibility of hurricanes and crazy weather and things like that, what do you advise people? How should they take care of their trees and their yards?
The biggest thing is, believe it or not, is not going to be pruning. It's going to be fertilization, making sure your watering is getting, like today we had a rain, right? Well, you don't need to water tomorrow because your soil is going to be saturated for a long time.
Okay.
And there's a really cool, and you've got azaleas next to trees. You really have to work with somebody that knows how to, kind of work around that situation to where you're not killing the tree, but you're also not killing the azalea. Just as an example.
But people could overwater.
You can absolutely overwater. And I think it started, best I can figure. I haven't been here we got here in 2020. And it's called Phytophthora. Don't write that down. I don't expect you to remember it, but it's a fungal. It's actually technically a water mold fungus. And what that means, think of it like black mold, is when you get, water in a roof that leaks or whatever. Now you've got that super saturated situation. The fungus, all it takes is one spore can come in. It's got a host now. It's got the right environment, and it's got the spore of the seed. And so all of a sudden it's going to take over. But I see this in maybe 60% of the homes that I visit, and even commercial properties too. And one thing you can look for is on the leaves, it'll start to die back from the ends down. And so that's just an example of overwatering. Now you're creating a perfect breeding ground for this fungal pathogen to come in, and it's not going to always kill the tree or the plants or the grass or whatever. But a lot of times it's just another factor, another stressor that the tree has to deal with. And so absolutely fertilization, water management, we call it integrated pest management, where most of the time we're watching and then we have a certain threshold that now we start treating for, and that sort of thing. So that's what I love to do is work, one-on-one with people to, whether they're a commercial property or a developer or just, homeowner down the street, my neighbor down the street or whatever.
Right.
Is just figure out, okay, where are you at? What's the situation? And again, trees are integrated with the landscape. So a lot of times it's not just the trees. Is where are we at with the trees and plants? Where do we need to be? And how do we get there, kind of thing? And just developing kind of a roadmap like that. And I've found that, typically most problematic situations can be resolved within 1 to 2 years. Most stressors take 3 to 5 years before they show up. And so, let's say your sidewalk was redone right next to your live oak. Well, yeah, it may look fine now, but the tree may be struggling to get the resources it needs because it just had the roots, which take up those minerals and feed the tree, have been severed, right? So you guys just
right.
Trees actually have a vascular system. And so if there's any damage like that, you may not see it for 3 to 5 years later. I've seen it up to 7 with one situation in Houston we're dealing with. And so it's important to just be proactive. And I've found when you have a plan, when you work the plan and do little things over time, trees are very low cost and they provide so many benefits. Even there's one of my favorite studies is they studied 1,000 cancer patients. They found that 20% of the time they recover more frequently, and 20% fast. I think it's 22% or something like that. Percent faster recovery rate for cancer patients when they simply have a window with a view of trees, kind of a treescape, if you will. And so I think, trees don't need people. If we leave them alone, they grow to 1,000 years often. It's when we get involved, that's typically when the stressors begin. We take this tree that's designed to be in a lush, awesome soil, like a forest soil, and which is microbially active. And then we put a new house on the property, come in with manufactured clay that has no microbial benefit, no benefit for the tree whatsoever, but it'll hold the house up real nice, that's important. But then you put a new tree in it, and you've probably all seen the driving around new neighborhoods is like all the trees are struggling,
right?
Like every one of them, and it's usually just little things over time you could do to correct that and rebuild the soil condition and make it a more healthy growing environment for the tree.
Right.
Or trees.
Well, and then you said about the roots and stuff. People remodel.
Yep.
People have plumbing issues. The water authorities come through.
Yeah.
All of those things besides sidewalks and driveways and all of that. And I'm sure no one even thinks what it's doing to the tree. But you're right. The roots could be who knows how far away.
Yeah, the research shows about 5 times the radius from the trunk to the edge of the tree canopy. So the drip line is what we call it.
Wow.
Multiply that distance by 5, and that's where they approximate a lot of the feeder roots, which absorb minerals and water. And the analogy, a lot of people think there's a taproot, and for some trees there absolutely is. But it usually gets sloughed off, later on in life, 15, 20 years down the road, as the horizontal roots, the lateral roots expand. And if you think of it like fishing, is like if you throw a fishing line, yeah, you might catch a fish, you might catch a lot of fish that day or whatever. But if you throw a net, you're going to catch them all. So nature's always looking for the path of least resistance. And so by spreading that net wide, that tree's going to have a lot more opportunity to collect rainwater. Every mineral that the tree gets, every vitamin or nutrient, is absorbed in water. So if you've got no water, like the drought we had last year, you've got 2 problems. Is A, the tree needs a drink, it needs water. But B, it's also not able to pull the nutrients out of the soil and bring it up and feed itself. So you get that compounding effect. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of magnolias around.
Right.
That was a big problem with that, is they would, because of the low humidity, high temperature, obviously, low humidity, they would lock open the little openings that give off gas. Well, normally in the evening, because they're lubricated because of the humidity, they're able to close and it seals off and it stops losing water, especially in drought conditions. Well, these got locked open. It's kind of a hormone issue mixed with a nutrient deficiency, mixed with just not enough water. And so you see the leaves hang on. It looks like a normal tree, except they're all dead.
Oh,
and so
goodness.
I'm sure you've probably seen that driving around. Well, that's exactly what happened, is they're not able to get the water. They're bleeding off more water, and they've got no nutrients coming in. So, of course, they're going to be stressed or die in some cases.
Well, it's exciting when, like I said, when I was looking at your website, I noticed that you did talk about you're not just residential, you're commercial. You even will help cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is important, especially down here. We covered 9 cities.
Yes.
And some of them, League City's famous for their oaks over there. So all of those things you have the knowledge to help with. How's that going? Are you working
Really well.
with some of the
Yeah,
cities?
I'm working with a few of them now, smaller municipalities. I
Right.
haven't gotten a hold of Houston yet,
Well,
although I'm working on it. League City, Heather's a great arborist, by the way. You're very lucky to have her as an arborist, Heather McKnight. So yeah, but Full Shear, I just talked to them a little bit. The Woodlands, I've worked with a bit.
a lot of trees in the woodlands.
A lot of trees in the woodlands, yeah, and they did a good job of writing the tree protection ordinances to where they can have that forested feel, and obviously that's what they're known for, is the woodlands. And,
Right.
it'd be boring if it were just the lands.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
right.
and so, yeah, but I think a lot of that was because of policy that the residents there voted in to keep these trees preserved. And so, in order to get a tree removed, you have to have a permit in the woodlands. And so that's what one thing, on the municipal level, how do you change to where you preserve the trees? Because Houston historically, since 2011, and the study ended at 2021, but they have historically been losing 11% of their trees per year. And so it's been consistent. Obviously, we had that heat wave, that massive drought in 2011. They estimate killed 5 billion Texas trees. Well, they've basically, the mortality rate has continued on at that same level for this entire thing. So we've been working on a couple political games that we're playing to stop that. And within really the only way to do that is from within. And so it has to be a policy and a procedural change. And so, yeah, I love looking at I'm the nerdy kid that loves getting down to the fine print on the tree ordinances and all that. And
But
saying,
somebody needs to. So
how can
that's
this be
good.
improved? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so listeners now are just homeowners, residents, but also small business. When should they call you?
It's always a good idea, like I said, to be proactive. So you don't necessarily need maybe just and we can do either a digital consultation or we can show up on site and do a consultation. So it's good to do that in advance. But really, anytime you start noticing a change in your trees, and you look around, there's a lot of live oaks, like you said, around here, a lot of pines too. Your pine should be dark green. If it looks yellow, that's a problem. If it looks thin, that's a problem. If you're losing needles, that's a problem. Live oaks are a little more difficult to tell, when they're having issues. One thing you can look for is on the end of the branch, like we just had a big growth spurt for the spring, right? So you should get new growth. Well, the tree should put off 6 to 12 inches of new growth on the end every single year. On more mature trees, like once you get to 40, 50 years old, it's going to slow down drastically, but for the most part, your younger live oaks are going to grow 6 to 12 inches. If they're not doing that, that's a problem. If they start looking yellow, that's a problem. If the leaves are shaped weird, and what I'm talking about. Look at your neighbors, look at the healthy trees. You can tell, man, that tree just looks happy, whereas this tree looks sad or whatever. If you've got a lot of dead wood in any tree, it might be a good time. But like I said, we did have a drought last year, so there's going to be some lasting impacts on that, which we might not see 3 to 5 years.
But you'd be able to tell, though.
Yeah. I look for the subtle. I
You
look
have
for
the knowledge.
Distance between the leaves growing. How much is that? That tells me how much wood the tree's able to make, which tells me how many resources. So I look at it from a microscopic lens and test the wood to see how sound it is, things like that. But just as your normal everyday tree owner or homeowner or whatever, just look for signs of stress. Deadwood's normal. You're going to get limbs that are lost as the tree doesn't need it. But when you start seeing big limbs, that might be a sign it's a good time to call. If you start seeing the tree just doesn't look as healthy as it did last year, it might be a good time to call. And like I said, we can make it even better deal and just do a digital consultation. You can send us pictures. We can do a little Zoom chat if you just want a quick answer. Or if you want a full analysis, we'll go through and just look at everything, stick some probes in the ground and things like that. And, and just really poke around and see what's going on with the trees and figure out what we need to do moving forward.
Well, and then also too, the pruning and all that kind of stuff really should check with you first, because some people, even though they say they're tree trimmers and stuff like that, right? They may not have the knowledge that you're talking about, and you could actually harm the tree.
Well, and somebody said, they said hiring your landscaper to take care of your trees is like hiring your dentist to do your brain surgery. It's like they probably have the right tools. That doesn't mean you should do that. That's not a great idea. So an arborist looks at the tree. The landscaper looks at the full package. It's kind of similar to an urban forester looks at more the global scale of everything from the massive historic trees down to the grass. But an arborist is going to look at the tree individually and say, okay, what's going on with that one versus this one? And just what do we need to do to best manage these trees?
Wonderful. Anything else you want to tell people about?
I think that's it.
Very good. So tell everybody your website.
Yep. It's Arborist, ARBORIST, on demand.org. .com or .org.
It's got a lot of information on it. Yeah. I was reading through it as well. It's really, really good stuff. And then they can contact you anytime, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And all our contact, you can even do the chat right through our website. So.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Well, Matthew, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.